sleeping position prevents strokes, not manages them, not marginally reduces a statistical risk in a monitored clinical population, prevents them. My name is Rebecca Harmon. I am 74 years old. I slept wrong for 68 years. I woke up tired every morning of my adult life, and I told myself that was what getting older felt like. Then I had a small stroke, and I found out in the quiet of my own kitchen, on my own time, what no one with a medical degree had ever once thought to tell me. The way you lie down tonight determines what your brain does while you are asleep. And most people over 65 are lying down in a position that is quietly working against them every single night of their lives. I know how that sounds. I know it sounds like the kind of thing you find on a website with no sources next to an ad for supplements. I want you to stay with me anyway, because what I am about to tell you, I learned not from a journal, but from 31 years of watching patients, the ones who stayed well and the ones who did not, and then from what happened to my own body when I finally started paying attention. I want to tell you something first before I get to the sleeping, because I think it matters that you understand who is telling you this and why. I spent 31 years as a cardiologist. I sat across from patients and delivered news that changed their lives in an afternoon. I held the hands of people who did not make it. And in all of that time, in 31 years of sitting in rooms with people whose hearts and brains were under threat, I never once asked a single patient how they slept, what position, what angle, whether they woke up between 2 and 4 in the morning, feeling like they had barely rested at all. Those questions were not on my intake form. They did not fit inside a 10-minute appointment, and the system I worked inside had no place for them, so they never got asked. I retired at 68. 6 months later, I had a small stroke. Nothing that left visible damage. A few hours of confused speech, a scan, a very quiet room, and a doctor younger than most of my former residents, telling me that the left side of my neck had the kind of buildup he would expect to see in someone who had spent a lifetime ignoring the things I told other people to address. He was not wrong. I went home from that hospital and sat in my kitchen for a long time, not afraid, something different from afraid. The specific feeling of a man who handed out advice for 3 decades that he had never once personally tested. That night, I started looking into something I had dismissed every time a patient had mentioned it, the position you sleep in. And what I found in the months that followed changed every night of my life since. Here is what your body is doing while you sleep, and why the position matters more than almost anything else happening in that bed. My father slept on his back his entire adult life, flat on his back, chin slightly up, the way people sleep when no one has ever told them to do anything different. He was a healthy man by every measure his doctor used. He exercised. He kept his weight reasonable. He did not smoke after his 40s. He took his blood pressure medication without complaint. He died of a stroke at 71. I do not know with certainty that a different position would have saved him. I will carry that not knowing for the rest of my life. But I know that I think about him every single night when I get into bed. I reach down. I feel for my right side. I turn, and I say his name before I close my eyes. Not out loud to anyone, just so he stays present for one more day. Your brain has a cleaning system. It only runs while you are asleep. What it does is push a slow current of fluid through the brain tissue to carry out the waste that builds up during the day. The proteins, the byproducts of all that thinking and processing and running a body, and flush them out through the drainage pathways in your neck and chest. Your brain, while you sleep, is taking out its own garbage. This system was only described and named in 2013, which means that most doctors practicing today finished their training before it existed in the literature at all, before anyone had a word for it, before anyone knew it was there. Here is what the research found after 2013, and what almost no one in a clinical setting is telling people over 65. The position you sleep in determines how well that cleaning system works, not slightly, dramatically. Right side sleeping produces the most efficient cleaning of any position. Sleeping on your back cuts that efficiency significantly. Sleeping on your stomach cuts it further and adds a separate category of problem through how it bends the neck and puts pressure on the blood vessels running up into the head. The waste that does not get cleared does not wait patiently for the next night. It stays, it builds, and what it builds into, those specific proteins accumulating in brain tissue, is the same material found in the brains of people who have strokes and lose their memory to vascular decline. I spent 31 years treating the end of that process. I never once asked a patient to interrupt it at the source, at night, in their own bed, free of charge, no prescription required. I started sleeping on my right side the week I read that first study. Not because I was certain, because I was done being incurious about my own body. The right side specifically matters for a second reason. The drainage pathway from the brain runs more freely when the left side of the body is slightly elevated above the right, which is exactly the position you create when you lie on your right side. There is also the heart. The heart sits slightly left of center in your chest. Every night you spend on your left side, you are placing gentle but steady pressure on the tissue surrounding it across every hour of sleep. Year after year, decade after decade, cardiologists have known for a long time that sleeping on the left increases the heart complaints of people who already have some sensitivity. What we did not connect, or did not try to connect, was what that steady pressure does to the blood flow patterns that contribute to stroke risk in people over 65. I am not telling you that sleeping on your right side guarantees you never have a stroke. I am not telling you that. I am telling you that the specific ways stroke risk builds over time, the poor clearing, the blood vessel irritation, the blood pressure changes across the night, are all meaningfully affected by position, and that effect costs nothing. It requires no appointment. Now let me tell you about the angle, because the position was only the beginning of what I learned about what the night is actually doing inside you. Sleeping completely flat, even on your right side, is not the best configuration for people over 65. The research on overnight pressure inside the head is consistent. A slight elevation of the upper body, somewhere between 10 and 30 degrees, reduces the pressure on the blood vessels in the brain during the hours when blood pressure follows its natural nighttime drop. Most people's blood pressure drops 10 to 20% during deep sleep. In people whose arteries are still flexible, that drop is protective. In people with stiffened arteries or existing plaque, which describes the majority of people over 65, whether they know it or not, that same drop can reduce the flow through already narrowed vessels to the point where the brain is not receiving adequate supply during the most vulnerable hours of the night. A wedge pillow under the upper body, elevating from the waist up at roughly 15 degrees, addresses this directly. I have used one every night for 6 years. My neurologist, who looked at my most recent imaging, told me the state of my blood vessels was considerably better than she would expect for a man my age with my history. I did not tell her what I had changed. I knew she would not know where to file it. I want to tell you about the window between 2 and 4 in the morning, because most people do not know about it, and it is where the danger is highest. Most strokes, the kind caused by clots rather than bleeding, occur between midnight and 6, with the concentration heaviest in the early morning hours. This is not random. Your body starts preparing to wake before you open your eyes. Cortisol begins rising. Your blood gets stickier as part of the preparation for the demands of the day. Blood pressure begins climbing back up from the nighttime dip. In a person whose blood vessels are healthy and flexible, these transitions are managed without incident. In a person with stiffened arteries and blood that is already running thick, which again describes most people over 65, these are the conditions under which clots form, and vessels that were managing adequately stop managing. Position through this window matters. Back sleeping during these hours is tied to a much higher rate of partial airway obstruction, even in people who have never been told they have a sleep problem and would never describe themselves as snorers. These partial closures drop blood oxygen for seconds at a time, over and over across hours. Each drop wakes the nervous system slightly. Each time the nervous system wakes, blood pressure nudges upward and the blood gets a little stickier. You wake up not knowing any of this happened. You feel tired in a way you put down to age. You are not tired because of age. You are tired because your body spent the night quietly managing a series of small events you were never awake to see. Right side sleeping with slight head elevation removes most of that obstruction. The airway stays open. The oxygen stays stable. The nervous system is not being called up in the night. The morning arrives in a body that has actually rested. I sleep better now than I did at 45. I say that not to impress you. I say it because I spent 25 years telling patients that poor sleep was an inevitable part of getting older, and I was wrong. It is a feature of uninformed sleeping. There is a difference between those two things. I want to say one more thing, and it has nothing to do with any of this physiology. It has to do with the conversation I have had with myself every night for the past 6 years as I get into bed and do the small, deliberate things I now know to do. I check my position. I adjust my angle. I do a few minutes of breathing that is slower than the pace of a man whose nervous system is already running on tomorrow. And in those minutes, something settles in my chest. Not peace exactly, something quieter than that. The specific feeling of a man who finally stopped waiting for someone else to hand him the information he needed. I gave patients prescriptions for 31 years. I sent them for imaging. I referred them to specialists. I did all of that with genuine care, and I never once asked how they slept. There is no billing code for that conversation. There is no follow-up appointment scheduled around it. The system I worked inside had no room for it, so the room never got made. That is not an excuse for me or for the system. It is just what happened, and it is why I am saying it here, directly to you, outside that room. You are not too old to change how you sleep. The body does not stop responding to position because you have been sleeping the wrong way for decades. It responds tonight. Whatever your history, whatever your last set of numbers looked like, the conditions you create for your brain and your heart in the next 8 hours are yours to decide right now, not after the next appointment, not after the results come back. Tonight, sleep on your right side. Elevate your upper body 15 degrees. A wedge pillow costs $10. Breathe slowly before you fall asleep, not as a ritual, as a deliberate act of keeping your nervous system out of a state it has no business being in when you are supposed to be at rest. Give your brain the position it needs to clean itself. Give your heart the position that asks the least of it through the night. Stay off your back through the early morning hours. These are small things. They take no time. They require no prescription. And they are what I wish I had known to tell my father, and what I wish I had known to tell myself 30 years before I finally started paying attention. You are not too old. You are not too far gone. You have not missed your window. Whatever age you are watching this, whatever your body is carrying right now, the choices that matter most are still in front of you, not behind you. I am Rebecca Harmon. I am 74 years old. I sleep 8 hours a night and I wake up ready. I have not stopped being a cardiologist just because I retired. I have just finally started practicing on myself.